We will now get started with our two client speakers for the day, coming from North Dakota and Pennsylvania. Each of our speakers will be sharing their insight into how they successfully planned for and drove adoption and implementation of Microsoft project-based solutions. First up is Justin Data, and he will be presenting from the state of North Dakota. Justin has been in project management for 23 years, and he has had experience working in publishing, finance, and consulting before changing gears and starting work with the government. He's been with North Dakota for close to 16 years and has worked in the PMO for almost 6 of those years. So thank you for joining us today, Justin. The floor is yours.
All right, thank you. I had to just find my mute button. So thank you, Fragility, for having me. I'm very happy and excited to be here. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in to hear what I've got to share. Hopefully you'll learn a few things about the state of North Dakota's Project Online implementation. You can see here is a kind of fancy building. Unfortunately, I have not been in a kind of fancy building for a long time. This is what happens in my work environment sometimes lately. I'm sure you've all been here. When you can't be in your home office anymore, you take a step outside of the backyard. Anyway, like Sarah said, my name is Justin Data. Data is my real name. I did make it up so I could get this amazing job in government IT. But if you learn anything today, I hope you take away that my wife's name is Tara Data. So there's a real human out there named Tara Data. Anyway, this is me in project management for 23 years, had my PMP, done other things before I got to government, and have stuck with government for a long time. I've been in the PMO since 2005, and I've been heading up the PMO here at the state of North Dakota for around 6 years. And the last point, I can no longer tell if I work from home or if I live at work, as you can see from that picture. I'm going to start off telling you a little bit about North Dakota and NDIT. So our state government, we have a population of 762,000. We're the 4th smallest population of all 50 states. We are smaller than most metro areas. So yeah, pretty rural for the most part. We border Canada, and we are located at the geographical center of the continent. We are not to be confused with South Dakota, who is south of here and does not border Canada. Our state government includes the 3 branches of government: higher ed and elementary and secondary education. So we cover a lot of ground. We have just shy of 10,000 employees and a $15 billion budget. That's biennial, so that's for 2 years, and that includes all our funding, both state, local grants, federal grants, all that kind of stuff lumped into one giant bucket. I work for NDIT, North Dakota Information Technology. We are a technology agency. We are part of the executive branch. We report up to the governor through our CIO, and we are responsible for wide area network services for all state agencies, higher ed, county, city schools, and responsible for providing hosting. We do software development, BI, project management, all sorts of the typical stuff you would imagine would be part of an IT company that does a lot of stuff. So we have about 450 people on staff right now and a $213 million biennial budget. So let me tell you a little bit about NDIT, our project office, and our PPM history. And I'm not just going to tell you about our implementation with Fragility, but I'm going to go back in time and tell you about a couple of failed attempts we've had at this that gave us some good lessons learned. So when we got to the point where we were implementing our PPM solution with Fragility, we had a good foundation of how to get into that. So project management, we've had a PMO since 2005. We had 5 PMs. Now we have 16 plus various contract positions, depending on how much workload we have. We have various laws and standards relating to IT project management, such as you have to have a PMP in order to manage a major IT project. Any project over $500,000 that's IT has to have a project manager assigned. We have practices that are in standard and in law that we have to accommodate. So we attempted our first implementation of PPM, Project Portfolio Management System, in 2008. That failed. Now I know that's a long time ago when it comes to IT. but some of the lessons we learned are just timeless. So I'm going to share a couple of those. We attempted another in 2018 that also failed, and the third time is the charm. In 2019, going strong and getting stronger with Project Web App, aka Project Online. So quickly, here's our implementation timeline when we got to Project Web App. So you heard Agility say they are on time and on budget, and I gotta agree with that because they said you're gonna have this schedule, and we stuck to it by the minute. So in April, we kicked off. We had our on-site, some analysis and design. We were done with that by the end of May. By the end of June, we had a build and we validated that build. And then mid-July, we were deployed and doing our final acceptance. Now, what did we get on that day? It got us to what we are calling a land and stand position. So a lot of consulting firms are using this term out there. I've heard it a lot. It's just, you get the tool, you get the implementation. All right, so we got Enterprise Project Web App. We had minimal customizations, just one workflow. We had 4 Power BI dashboards that were delivered based on the data in the system. And most importantly, we had enough training to be dangerous. And dangerous we were. So since that's been implemented, I'm not going to go through this step by step, but you can read it yourself. But I'm just going to key on some key things. So in the bottom left, it says scope has been focused on the project management office staff and some others. So what projects do we have in there? Okay, we've got a government that's got 56, 57 state agencies. It's got a judicial branch and a legislative branch, and it's got all these schools. That's not all the stuff we put in here. We're focusing on the projects, like I said before, the $500,000 mark that are managed by our project office. So, the 15 to 20 project managers that are working on those projects are what we're managing, plus some willing participants who wanted to use the system and get on there. So that's our initial scope. Since we've implemented some key things we've been doing, I think you're going to need to do if you are implementing such a system is evangelizing your project tool, training and retraining, making sure people are on the same page with how they use it. You're going to find that as you get into this, implementation is the starting line, right? So there's a lot of work to get your implemented product into production, but as far as necessitating the culture change, the work change, the process change, that is day one. So expect the work to really get hard after your tool's in. And if you see when you get to the next 3 months that I have written there, when the writing says the CIO tells me how many projects I have in flight because he looks at the dashboards regularly, that's when things start getting good. Okay, when your executive team tells you about your project data that's on your dashboards without even having to ask you about it, you know you're doing something right. And we'll talk about that in my value statement later. So let's talk about key challenges. That's why everybody's here, right? You want to learn, what's the hard part and how do you get through it? So I'm going to go back in time to 2008 to start off. And we tried to put in a very well-known system at the time. We sought buy-in with 5 partner agencies, so 5 agencies were trying to do this together. Installed the tool, so 1 agency used it well, 4 struggled. The tool was very complex. The tool management was very cumbersome. We failed. We didn't even think about how much it cost to upkeep it outside of the licensing, the people cost, the consulting cost, the additional knowledge and training that you need beyond the basics. We failed to acknowledge the required culture change. We did none of that. So everybody got really tired, and our executive team, who was already kind of poorly bought into it in the first place, decided this isn't worth it. Nobody's getting value at it, and all you're doing is complaining to us. So it got canceled. What did we learn? We learned that managing a PPM system is work, right? So someone or some people need the dedication to do it. I think, we get excited like, oh, we got a tool, all our problems are solved. No, the tool is the starting line. Don't forget it's the starting line. There's a lot of work to do after that. If your partners aren't unified in their vision for the system, it won't be used in a uniform fashion. So one of the beautiful things about a PPM system is that you can get a lot of projects managed and a lot of project managers managing their work in a similar fashion. If you're not doing that, what's the point? My opinion. Anyway, if the tech stack is completely new or outside of your organization's current capabilities, it will be difficult to feed. Okay, there's technology risk. If no one knows how to use that technology stack, they're gonna have to learn it. And that takes time, it takes money, it takes effort, it takes endurance, all that stuff. And keeping the systems lights on costs real time and real money. And if you can't show the value based on the time and money you're putting into it, you're canceled. So that one was done. Then we went away for a long time and licked our wounds. It was very painful. It was very disheartening. We were extremely deflated. And we went to the good old fashioned, let's just throw some Excel sheets into a folder, and we'll throw our Microsoft project files into a folder. And then SharePoint came along and we started doing better collaboration things. So we're using this kind of dispersed method of managing projects where everybody was kind of on their own, but we had some practices and processes to try to keep things together. I'm sure that probably sounds familiar to a lot of people. So we sat and did this for a very long time, and then one day we got a new governor and a new CIO, and the first thing he did is he did an operational assessment on our entire organization. And that assessment said that the lack of a tool and related processes to track work from an enterprise level at our agency was a major hit to our maturity level and to the maturity of the IT organization as a whole. So let me tell you, if fire was lit very quickly and we were kicked into gear and told to go get a PPM system in place, how could you not have one all these years? You're a project office. We said, I know, right? We've been wanting this. Let's go. So there's our purpose statement. Not going to read it, but basically we had to go get it. And we had to go get it by yesterday or last week. So if you know anything about state government, there are various ways that you are allowed to purchase things, and most of those ways take a lot of time. However, there are some certain procurement vehicles in government that allow you to do things a little bit quicker. So we went to one of those, which is a vendor pool, if you will. And there were 3 major PPM solution providers who were on that particular pool that we were able to purchase off of. So we had a choice of one of those 3, and none of them were Microsoft Project Online at that time. Okay, they were all your top right quadrant type of Gartner, innovator, best type products. So we demoed some, we narrowed it down to 2, and then we said, we're going to pick this one. This one, it can do everything we want it to do. It's going to be beautiful. And yes, it could do everything we wanted to do, but we had some problems with that. As you can see on my bulleted list, the complexity was unfathomable. The support and service was non-existent from that particular company. So we faced facts early and we moved to redirect quickly. I'm showing you this, and this is an actual slide that I showed to my executive team. So the quick version of what happened to put this slide together is that we were having a really hard time with our particular solution. It was not going well. It was going extremely poorly, and it was just about time to take a Christmas break. So a lot of staff went home for Christmas, and I went home and I had a few days off, and I thought to myself, I'm going to go back in January and I'm going to make this thing work. All right, because what happens, I should tell you this. I'm sorry, a minute. What happens with licensing for Microsoft Project and Microsoft products in general is that there can be a delay between when it's available in the private sector and when it's available in the public sector on the public cloud. So we had not looked at Microsoft Project Online at this time because it was not available, the current version, on our government sector yet. So there are also a few things that we wanted to use from the Microsoft O365 kind of environment that were not also available on the government sector yet. So we were looking elsewhere. Okay, went home, said I'm going to come back, I'm going to make this faulty product work that we had tried to put in that was not Microsoft Project Online. Logged in literally the first day back at work in January, and all this stuff was suddenly available on the government sector. So myself and my team of people who were trying to implement this put this slide together to figure out, should we just cancel, should we fail fast, and should we go to Microsoft Project Online? Because that we could now buy just right off of our government cloud. So the cons, pros, you can see them right there, right? Our old company, we had poor support, we had a steep learning curve, everything was an add-on, It was very complex to administer the system. It was a different technology. It was not a native technology that we had administrators in our organization who are expert in. Turned out that document collaboration was an additional expense. They didn't tell us that up front. And then we said, okay, so what are the cons of Microsoft Project Online? We said, it's another Microsoft product, right? Microsoft products have personalities. Sometimes we love them, and sometimes we tell it, why does it think for us so much? So there's that. Government functionality, always on a delay from general release, and the UI wasn't as slick as this other one that we were working with. But the pros of Microsoft, as you can see, really started to outweigh everything, especially because we are a Microsoft shop, right? We have Office 365. We use all of Microsoft productivity tools. All of our people know how to use Active Directory and how to integrate it into other systems. When we looked at the other system, all of the administration, everything was up to our project office. So now when we look at, we are a Microsoft organization, we have all of these skill sets available to us, the administration and support of the system got so much easier. And on top of that, because we have so much Microsoft licensing, the license costs were actually considerably less than what we were looking to pay for the system that was not working out for us. So we said, hey, remember executive team when you said we want to have a fail fast philosophy and stay government? Well, let us be the first to fail fast. We want to cancel this other vendor and we want to go start purchasing and implementing Project Online. And they said, hey, good case, let's go. So that's what we did. What did we learn with number 2? Small fish may get treated as such by big fish implementation partners. It's nice to work with a more personal sized company. It's not just basic system admin, it's user admin, system security, cloud access, integration with other apps. If you have a skill set on site that is knowledgeable in some of these things with a particular technology stack, it's much easier on your PMO to get it implemented. So the best system isn't necessarily the best for you. Just because it's in the upper right stratosphere of somebody's report doesn't mean it's going to be in the upper right stratosphere for your personal usage of the system. So keep that in mind when you're looking at the system. Is it right for you? Is it not just the best? PMs who are Microsoft Project Gantt chart nerds do not approve of lesser Gantt charting applications. So what we found is that everybody tells you they integrate with Microsoft Project. You can upload your Gantt chart, blah, 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 blah. Okay, if you have people who are hardcore Microsoft Project users who could do everything on that system, and I know there's, not tons of them, but if you have those, they will be disappointed not having full-fledged Gantt chart capability. And one thing to point out too is that demand and resource forecasting is a long discipline journey. So we really wanted to get that going right away, and we do have the capability to do it. But there is a lot of integration, if you have billing systems or timekeeping systems. So there's a lot of thoughts about how you may need to integrate with other systems. There's also a huge cultural change if you're not tracking all of that time right away that you're going to need to take on. So demand resource forecasting, the technology is out of the box, but making it work is definitely not out of the box. And if maybe the next speaker will contradict me, and I would love to talk to her more if she says that. All right, so let me tell you about our Project Online implementation, some of the things we learned. So challenge, short time frame to implement. We needed it yesterday, so we dedicated some core team members and freed up their time to focus on it. Can't stress enough how important that was. We would not have allowed Fragility to hit their and our deadlines if we did not do that. Because it's a lot of work, especially when you get to testing. You need to test, and it takes time. Organizational buy-in. So solution, make sure the person at the top of the food chain wants it. So I told you about that first implementation where we had weak executive support. Night and day experience between having weak executive support and between having the CIO say, go get it. Okay, it lights a fire and it makes the concept stick. Big time. Get that executive support. Challenge, sustaining change. All right, we've been doing this for a little while now. How do we keep it going and not get boring or bored or everybody sick of it? Well, they could be sick of it, but they're still using it. You need a champion or a few. You need solid in-house project Microsoft project skills as well. So two big things. I'm like the PWA cheerleader. I'm out there getting people to use it, to keep using it, to use it right, making sure there's training, making sure that everybody's got their Microsoft project skills. And let me tell you, we have a couple people who are real Microsoft project pros on my team. Invaluable. If you don't have one, get one if you can, or start the training program. Challenge, transitioning to new normal. Solution, building new processes around the system. Training. You know, I think I've said training a few times already. It's ongoing. Keep training how to use the system, even with your project managers who are experienced, because getting the data in there how you want it, so it gets viewed the right way and does all your calculations for, say, variance, for example, correctly. It takes training, and it takes work, and it takes that cheerleader or a team of cheerleaders to continually monitor the system to make sure that that information is entered correctly and providing value. So another challenge, advancing the system. What do we do next? So good data in returns great dashboards or great reports, and that is the value. So to keep advancing the system, you need that, and you need to keep adapting and interfacing to other systems as your organization grows and changes. And we're in the midst of some of that stuff now. And in order to do that, you got to keep your project office and that tool in the conversation. So let me show you some value. I've got screenshots of some dashboards, and I absolutely love these dashboards, and people are probably on my team sick of hearing about these, but these are great. These did not exist prior to having this Project Web App, Project Online system. So this is a general portfolio view of all the work that's in our system. You can see the projects, you can see the costs, you can see the variance. You know, we're $31 million. Good. Hey, go government. You can see everything. And one thing that you could also see is on the top right, you can see that there's something that says blank, and there's a bar that has 6 in it. I can see that 6 projects do not have the appropriate data in them, so I can click on that and it will filter my screen and I can go talk to those project managers. Yes, evil boss. All right. So here's another page, right? I can see all my projects, how they stack up against each other when they're going on. I can see when they end. Well, not just me. Everybody can see where they end. I can see their variance based on their color. And what I've done here, if you look up kind of top right again, you see state. I've changed it to in flight. So now it's not everything in the system, it's just the things that are currently being worked on. So all those menus across the top, you change them and you can filter your data. Okay, here, another page, enterprise portfolio, top middle. I've narrowed my portfolio down to health, so I can see the Department of Health basically here and all the work that they've got going on currently. That my team is working on. And you can see their budget, their variance, estimates of completion, all this great stuff. Now it's great stuff only if you're continually training, you're continually monitoring, and you're making sure that everyone on your team, all your project managers are entering the data in the same fashion and getting it in there in a quality manner so you can get that quality data out. This doesn't happen on day 2. This happens 6 months later, and it takes work to keep it up. More value. Okay, sponsoring agency on the top towards the left. I've filtered it now. This is another page. I can see all the milestones across the portfolio. I filtered it by human services. You guys seeing some value? This is great stuff. I love this. Another page in our portfolio, risks and issues. This is risks. The next page is going to be issues. I can see all the risks in the entire portfolio. And again, we could play the where's the blank category game. I could find people who aren't entering the risks. I could also see, based on the category, what are our biggest risks? Looks like scope's a problem, something we got to work on. Maybe we can do some continuous improvement later on someday about getting a better handle on some scope. Issues. All the issues across the portfolio, or I can narrow them down just like on any other page by the agency that is sponsoring it. You know, by the core pillar, is it an efficiency, alignment, delivery? That's a custom field that we put in there, for example, such as a sponsoring agency. So very easy to set those custom fields up with your implementation partner. It's very easy to maintain them if you have any experience setting up or designing SharePoint sites. It's just as easy as that. I can make all edits to these myself, to the custom fields, to the Power BI stuff, and when anything gets too difficult, I can throw in a ticket to Fragility and they can help me out. Very easy, very fast to change. In fact, we had a little thing, I don't know if you heard it, but there's a pandemic. Governments got CARES Act funding last year, enormous amounts of funding with a lot of tight deadlines on them. I was able to spin up in just a few hours a CARES Act funded project portfolio dashboard. So that could be viewed by the executive team. It didn't take, 3 weeks. It took a matter of a couple of hours to put some custom fields together and to spin up a brand new dashboard all on my own. So there you go, some more value. I love this stuff. I'm sorry, I'm going to keep going. Here's a project. So we have a project version of the dashboard too. So I can go pick a project, statewide parcel data set. We use this in our steering committee meetings. This is what we show. We don't hand out paper anymore. Everything's electronic. Where we screen grab the dashboard and put it in a slide, or we pull up the dashboard and we talk through it. I can see here, this guy's he's 27 days ahead, his schedule variance is good, his cost variance is good. I can see all his key milestones, his work, right? The costs, how they stack up over time. I can click a link and I can go to the actual system behind the scenes. I can see a little bit more detail on the next page, and I can see even more detail about project issues and risks combined now on this one page in the status report. And oh, he's got a blank there under issues by category. I'm gonna have to go talk to him after this and see what's up. See how easy it is? I know, right away. Gotta go talk about something. And I can do it not just on this project, but every single one of those 124 or 128 projects that are in here. Very simple. Now, when I corrected myself earlier and I said not just me, but everybody, literally everybody. So, our organization has Power BI licenses for the entire organization, the entire enterprise. So what I can do is I have set up a PMO project reporting team site, because everybody also, we're all in with Microsoft in our organization. So we have teams. We can embed all of the reports into this one PMO project reporting team site. And therefore, we can get anyone access to it in just a couple seconds. So right now, about 500 people have access to all of our reports. So any executive from anywhere throughout the organization, anyone who's working on any project throughout the entire organization can go in at any time to this team, click on a tab across the top, and see what's going down with any project they want to see. So that, for example, this one right here looks a little different. It is an example of our legislative report. So another fun thing is you can publish certain reports if you choose to do so publicly. So this is one of our public reports that fall under our legislative reporting process, targeted just to those items. How do we get it to show up there? Well, we just created a custom field that's a checkbox that says, is legislative reporting needed? If it is, you check the box, good to go, it shows up on this report. So value, continuing on a little bit, I'm getting close to my time, I'm almost done. Current status on all projects is always available, everywhere. I know one place to go, I could see everything. Anyone can see anything. Visibility into project load and project throughput, we got that, we didn't have that before. Data-driven system means I know which PM is doing which PM stuff. Like I said, you see no risks are logged on this project. You can go say, why aren't the risks logged? You should do your risk assessment. More project information available to more people, including the public, through our legislative dashboards. No more copy paste, no more PDFs. Project management and project reporting process is 100% electronic. So that's something we chose to do. We wanted to get rid of our copy and paste from a spreadsheet, from Microsoft project file, from a status report document to another status report document to another status report document, depending on who we're giving status to. We did away with that and we said, if you want to know what's going on, look at the dashboard. It was a learning curve. It was a cultural change, but a year-ish after, or a couple years, I forget what year is this? Last year went by so quick. It's a culture change and people are on board with it now. So we have zero paper. And in fact, it was in the nick of time because we're all working in a telework environment and we plan to keep working telework going into the future. All right, our system is scalable. Any group in the organization can join the fund. So if someone, a project manager at another agency wants to use our system, we can give them a license in short time and they're good to go. And as soon as they enter some data, they can show up in any of our reports or we can spin off another one custom for them. Although we don't want to do that because that's just more maintenance. All right, and all foundational elements are in place for future resource forecasting. So when we got our implementation, we got all the stuff you need to do resource forecasting. You also got all the stuff you need to do for portfolio balancing. So I'm going to say those are kind of maybe graduate or PhD level activities in a project management office. We're not doing those yet, but we have the technology that will allow us to do it as soon as we reach that level of maturity. So our path forward, we've got some ServiceNow being rolled out. We've got some Azure DevOps. So we're looking at how to integrate our project web app with those two different systems. So depending on where in our kind of work throughput the work is, we could have visibility on that, and the right thing is managed in the right place at the right time. So we hope to do that, as well as get to portfolio balancing, as well as get to resource forecasting in the future, because we think now we've got just the general project management stuff pretty locked down. We're also looking to hire a project web app system owner or a lead scheduler. You know, I think a lot of organizations, probably the best practice or what's most common is people do this on their own in their project office. And that's what we do. So we have 5 people who give a portion of their time in our project office to help administer and maintain and train on the system. What I found is I really want to have someone who's going to own that and make that a specific, unique position. Probably couldn't justify it, you know, a year and a half ago, but right now I can. I'm working through the HR system to hopefully get that. And I think it'll be an incredible benefit to what we can do to expand the usage across other departments, okay, and to make sure that all the data is really the best that it can be. So summarize, and I'm done. Immediately realized a reduction in process waste. Immediately, we increased available data on projects. Immediately, we made all PMO project work highly visible, front and center. Immediately, we aligned, enforced, and solidified the scheduling technique and technical PM processes at our organization because we absolutely had to, or we were going to drown. Okay, the tool makes it so you have to do that. So start thinking about it. Long-term goals, benefits, predictive resource planning, picking the right projects, and reducing churn and duplication. And that's it for me. Thank you for listening. And yeah, go out there and be legendary.
Awesome. Great presentation, Justin.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for sharing your Microsoft project implementation journey of success. So if anyone has questions for Justin, go ahead and type them into the Q&A box, and I'll read them aloud after our next client speaker, Angela Charnosky. Angela Charnosky is the Senior Director of the IT Program Management Office at Geisinger Health Systems. Prior to this role, Angela spent a decade in the IT department and has experience managing enterprise-wide projects and providing process engineering support, as well as leading transformational initiatives. In her current role, Angela is responsible for strategic direction of the IT PMO, where she manages a team of 40 project and portfolio managers. Her team is responsible for the IT demand management process, managing the complex enterprise-wide projects, and providing project management fundamentals, training, and support for the project management methodology and tools. So Ange is up next. Angela, if you could please share your screen.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. First and foremost, I wanted to thank Progility for giving me the opportunity this morning to share our journey with you. Hopefully you guys can learn a few things, a few tips and tricks that will help you drive through your own journey. And Justin, great presentation. Just to kind of respond to your comment about demand and resource forecasting, that is definitely the holy grail. We continue to put the right things in place, but it takes a lot of focus, a lot of discipline, and it is quite a heavy lift. So I agree with you there. Okay. First, are my slides presenting?
They are, yes.
Okay. All right. First, I wanted to start by giving a short background on Geisinger Health System. So we are an integrated health system with $7.1 billion in combined revenues. The fact that we're an integrated health system means that we have, hospitals, clinics, insurance operations, and also a school of medicine. So you can see on the slide, we have 9 hospital campuses. We have 125 clinic sites, and that number just continues to grow. We have almost 24,000 employees, and we have close to 1,700 employed physicians. Now, in our in our insurance operations, we have 550,000 members. We have almost 30,000 contracted providers, and we have over 100 hospitals in our network. As far as our School of Medicine goes, we have a School of Nursing. We have 569 residents, and we have over 1,000 active research projects in motion. This just shows our footprint. We're primarily in, the central and northeast region of Pennsylvania. Over the last 35 years, we have been an innovator in the market. We launched our health plan back in 1985. We opened our children's hospital in 1994. We were one of the first customers of Epic. So we went live on the Epic platform in 1997. Throughout the 2000s, we've launched a number of things like Proven Care. We've had the MyCode Genomics program launched. We have launched a direct-to-employer Center of Excellence program. Some of the participants include Walmart, Lowe's, and McKesson. You'll see in 2017, we acquired the Geisinger Commonwealth School of Medicine. Around 2019, we launched our Steele Institute Healthcare Innovation. And then, one of our more popular programs right now is the 65 Forward Health Centers, where we try and get our population that is 65 or older into the clinic and have kind of a one-stop shop where they can, embark on wellness activities and get the healthcare they need all in one place. This slide shows our strategic priorities, and this really it grounds us as far as which projects we decide to invest in. They all need to align to one of our strategic priorities of managing total health, operational excellence, or access and ease of use. This is another slide that shows kind of our history and the different campuses that we've acquired over the years. Now I'm going to get into really the meat of our Microsoft project journey. One of the things that we like to focus on is making sure that we're leveraging the right tools at the right time so that we can make sure that our future is sustainable. So our journey started way back in June of 2017. That's when we started to really discuss our options for selecting a PPM tool. August of 2017 is when we kicked off our project with our partners, Progility. They had a very structured way that they ran the project, and they really did keep us very disciplined, focused, and on schedule. So as you can see, we went through the design reviews and design sessions. We had a multitude of training opportunities available. And I'll get into that a little bit more, but one of the things we learned from our prior tool rollout was that, adoption maybe wasn't the best because we didn't really focus on training. So this time around, we really had a focus on the training aspect of the tool. As you can see, we went live in December of 2017. So we had, between 900 and 1,000 users that launched on this new platform in December. Through, the next few months, we really tried to stabilize our platform and, make sure everyone was using it appropriately. In October of 2019, we had kind of reinvigorated push to make sure that everyone was using the tool appropriately, logging their time, managing the projects, and all of that other good stuff. So you can see in 2019, we did offer a number of refresher training classes so that everyone was up to speed, or if we had new people join the organization, it was a good opportunity for them to learn the tool. So what that led up to was in January of 2020, we started to use PWA for IT capacity and resource evaluation. Now, as I said, as I kicked off the presentation, it is a very focused effort, and it does require, quite a bit of resource utilization to actually manage this piece of it. And then in April of 2020, we did kick off our portfolio management project. So that's really, kind of setting us up to get into balancing the portfolio, running some what-if scenarios so that we can determine trade-offs of, accepting a project into our portfolio or kind of trading out something else of lower priority to work something that is more of an importance to the organization. So we did enable those building blocks, and we are still kind of working through all the logistics of, putting the rubber to the road and utilizing that capability. One thing that the PMO did start to produce, in mid-2020 was the COO and CIO executive dashboards. So we, report out in a number of different forums to both our CIO, our COO, and a number of other C-level players within the organization, so that we do have that full transparency to kind of portray what IT is working on. And as you can see, we are planning our future, so we want to get more into a self-service reporting model. So why did we choose Microsoft Project? I think, the most important step is finding your why, kind of framing out the problem that you want to solve. So what we realized was our CIO had, and our other, executive leaders within IT had a really strong desire to make sure that the work we were doing is very transparent, so that, everyone understands, here's what IT is committed to work on in the next, 3, 6, 12 months. Once you start to do that, conversations within the organization from your requesters and business partners, the conversation kind of starts to shift, right? So that we get into more of a, trade-off kind of discussion rather than a discussion around, okay, so why isn't my request worked on yet? We also have an executive leadership team that does have a strong desire to make sure that they're making the right decisions based on the data. So those were the two top reasons why we needed to implement a tool. So why did we select Microsoft Project? Well, one of the things that I kind of alluded to in the beginning was we had a PPM tool prior to Microsoft Project. What we learned was it was not highly adopted. It was not very user-friendly. And just kind of factoring in the fact that we are a Microsoft-driven shop, that was, one of the main reasons that we started to, hedge toward Microsoft Project. Along with that, the user interface is very intuitive, and people find it very easy to use. And, lastly, it does have a large user community, so that, we do have support to help us, get through some challenges. So how close are we to solving our original problem? We're almost there. It is definitely a journey. So right now we do have IT PMO portfolio visibility, and we do have professional project managers who are all operating under, standard methodology. The last mile is always the hardest. So, what we're trying to work through right now is, how do we make sure that small projects are managed appropriately, and we're not it's not overkill for the intent of managing those small projects. We are using ServiceNow, so we need to figure out a good way to kind of bridge that gap between something that gets entered in ServiceNow and the work and the time that we're putting in to work those tickets, and also, the sustain work. So what we learned about our sustain work, we have the resource managers manage those types of projects. And what we saw is if we give them the keys to the kingdom, there's no standardization. So what we had to do was kind of take a step back and help them come up with some standardized tasks so that we can have some meaningful reports come out of those projects. Step 2 is very important. What you want to do is make sure that you are identifying and including the key players that are going to help make you successful. So what we did was we asked ourselves, okay, who are the key decision makers in the organization, right? So obviously our CIO, our CTO at the time, our finance department was a heavy user of our previous tool, so we needed to make sure that they were engaged so that they can continue their financial reporting and not miss a beat. Of course, our program management office was one of the very key stakeholders, and then our individual project and program managers themselves. The next thing we did was identify some power users. So when you're moving to the Microsoft Project tool, you need to make sure that you're identifying the right resource managers, project managers, and also team members, because when you get into the resource utilization, team members are just as important as project managers because they need to make sure that they're entering their time appropriately for the tasks they're working on. And then, of course, we brought in our end user computing team because they're really our system administrators for the tool. The next thing we did was identify our top use cases. So, we had a strong desire to make sure that we were tracking our time. The next step was to make sure that we're doing resource management. Of course, project management was very important, and that leads us into portfolio management and obviously metrics and reporting, because I'm a strong believer that what you report on is really what you focus on. The next step, really what you want to do is step back and think about where your organization is at as far as their maturity level of accepting some of the things that you're about to impose on them or work with them toward. So you don't want to dive right in into the deep end if you're not really ready for that. So what we did, it goes back to who drives decisions. So again, the C-level executive team. We talked through what information they need to make decisions. So the key thing was the strategic alignment. The next thing, we need to look at how big of a role does PMO play in providing guidance to the organization, because our IT department is a little over 900 people. We have probably 200 projects active at any given time in our organization, and clearly we can't have an IT project manager assigned to each and every one. So we need to make sure that we're providing strong guidance so that everyone is still functioning the same, even though they may not be a part of the PMO. The next thing, you really want to make sure that you're realistic in setting your goals. So we knew that our ultimate goals were around work visibility, that transparency piece was key. So that led into making sure our resource management process was tight, and then that can lead into data-driven decisions. And again, we need to take these things in steps that are manageable. So our main focus when we first rolled this out was on the time tracking and time management, and then tracing and managing the resource allocations versus actuals. So what are the achievable goals? In our previous tool, we were mainly just focused on buckets to track our time. What we wanted to do was kind of shift that focus a little bit and not lose the fact that we're tracking time, but we really wanted to roll out true project management fundamentals. And the holy grail was the forecasted work. Again, like I said, I'm a firm believer in reporting, so that was very important to us. And then, of course, the visibility and prioritization of work. Step 4, you really want to prepare your organization to accept this change. So, you need to step back and say, are we prepared for go live? Do we have the stakeholder support? And if not, how do we get there, right? So again, it goes back to those key stakeholders. So the CIO is really the one driving the need for the work visibility. So, his clear support and messaging was the ultimate key to making sure that our adoption rate was high. Again, finance, they needed to understand the tool. They needed to make sure that they had all of the resources available to them that they had in the prior tool in the future state. So we made sure that was a seamless transition for them. Of course, our program management office, we wanted to make sure that they were going to hit the ground running. So we made sure that they had proper training and that they could also be that support layer on the ground. So, if they were talking with resource managers, they could help guide them in different tips and tricks of how to use the tool. And then the IT department at large, we needed to make sure that they totally understood the importance of tracking their time, giving good estimates, and making sure that the work they were doing was transparent. So what we did to get ready for this was we trained and we trained and we trained. So we had 3 full days of training for every project manager and resource manager. There were multiple sessions so that everyone could make it to one session. We also recorded video clips for the team members so that they understood how to track their time. Step 5 was the exciting time of go live. So when we got to this point, we needed to make sure that we were keeping things in mind, such as, what are we tracking in the project attributes? Obviously, you had to keep in mind, what did we want to report on so that, we can make sure that we are capturing the right things so that we can report on the right things. The other thing that was a key it was a big accomplishment on our end, was to standardize the resource roles across the IT organization. So when you have 900 resources and multiple teams and different managers of those resources, getting alignment on a small manageable set of standard roles was probably one of the bigger accomplishments of the entire project. The other thing that we made sure was to keep it simple. Sticking very close to out-of-the-box functionality is an important thing to us. It helps us, move to new releases on the project on PWA, so that we, don't have to rework everything that we may customize. So sticking to out-of-the-box is a key. Like I mentioned before, Fragility really kept us focused in the workshops so that we did keep our project schedule. We made a decision to not go live with any type of workflows or customizations. But again, following the walk, crawl, run methodology, we did later activate the gate review process in an automated flow. The other thing that we had to account for was, what do we do with the projects that are still active and in our prior tool? So we decided to migrate these projects into the new tool, and we did engage Fragility for an extra set of hands on that. So our results to date, we are very transparent in our work. We have many reports that show that. We speak in many forums about, how to do that. We are a data-driven decision-making organization. We've realized that, the reports we have, the data we're using are all very important and do help us make good decisions. We keep an eye on our project health metrics so that, we can see when a project is red, how do we get that back on track? And then again, widespread adoption, we are very skilled users within the IT department in Microsoft Project. So what I wanted to show here was just a few of the reports that we're using. So I mentioned that, we're set up to start to use the portfolio balancing and using our drivers to kind of weight projects. So that's what I'm showing on this report here. We use the run, grow, transform methodology to kind of report out the bigger chunks of our work. So you can see, we track pretty much a little bit under the Gartner benchmark for our run category. So that's really the keep the lights on type work. And then you can see, our other, because we're lower on the run, it allows us to focus more on the grow and transform, which is really in line with our innovative mindset here at Geisinger. And then the last thing I wanted to highlight was our executive status report, which is auto-generated. The PMs can fill in minimal information as long as they're keeping their project up to date in the tool. They can generate this report on a weekly or bi-weekly basis and make sure they're sending it out to the right people. So of course, this is an ongoing thing. We're always looking to continuously improve. So we do engage with Progility on the expert care, and really what we focus on there is making sure our administrators are moving in the right direction. We're following best practice. And of course, reporting is really a key place where I like to focus the team. So what are we looking to do next? Of course, the reporting strategy is really our focus at the moment. We want to make sure that, as we get more information, we're appropriately using that information. And again, every time that you have a system where users are entering data, you need to monitor that data to make sure that you're finding the anomalies and correcting them before it becomes a problem. And then, as I kind of mentioned before, we're in the process right now of using the business drivers to kind of guide us into those what-if scenarios, so that we can have better conversations with our users around what projects should we take on. And as the industry starts to, as the industry is more accepting and using the agile methodology, and of course at Geisinger, we're adopting that as well. So we need to make sure that we're working through how to use our other agile tools effectively with Microsoft Project. So what did we learn throughout our journey? Really, it is a marathon. It is not a sprint. You really want to follow the crawl, walk, run, and don't take on more than you can handle at the moment. So, stick to out-of-box configuration. Keep an eye on and make good decisions around custom fields and custom configuration, because you may think it's a good idea at the time, but you really need to think it through and make sure you're understanding how it may impact you in the future. Again, training is never done. So I actually have a part-time trainer that works within the PMO so that they can do not only training on our PM methodology, but also on our tool sets, so that everyone is up to speed on using Microsoft Project the most efficient way, and to make sure it's in line with our standards. One of the things that we really think is very useful, and we get good feedback from our constituents, is we hold a monthly user group, and that's really like a lunch and learn session where people will bring their challenges, we'll work through them together, we'll share ideas. If we have any changes or things we're rolling out, we'll use that forum to really get people comfortable with the change. And then we also hold monthly office hours. Again, that's another forum where they can ask questions and work through answers together. The PMO does own the tool. I mean, we have our end user computing group, who is the system administrator, but we really do manage all parts and pieces outside of user access. And then again, I can't say this enough, but what you report on is what you focus on. So really keep that in mind. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. And again, thank you all for your time and attention today. And if you have any questions or follow up later, feel free to reach out to me anytime.
Ange, thank you so much for sharing your Microsoft PPM solution experience. So with that, we will go ahead and open our Q&A chat box. So if anyone has any questions for Justin or Ange, please type them into the Q&A chat box now and I will read them aloud. Give it another couple seconds here. If anyone has any questions for Justin or Ange, please type them into the Q&A chat box.
This is Justin. While we wait, I gotta say, I feel like I just met a long lost cousin. What a so many similar experiences.
So we do have a question here. Is it possible to implement resource management and forecasting without timesheets?
I'm going to jump in there. I don't think it's possible because you need to understand the current commitments, and you also need to allocate for the future to understand what availability you have in the future. So I don't think it's in your best interest to not track time and try to do resource management. The other aspect of that is to use the past to kind of predict the future so that you can see, how much time are you spending on that run or sustain activity so that you can predict it out, 3, 6, 12 months into the future.
Thanks, Ange. We have another question. What are best practices for tracking projects which are heavily delivered by vendors? I find that allocating resource time is difficult as I know my vendors work for various clients.
I can say something about that. I don't know if it's a best practice, but it's what we do. So as state government, we have our project office. There's a lot of big vendor implementations. So we do this a lot. So most of our contracts, what we find are we build them to be deliverable based for the most part. Now we do have some time and materials that we add in there also. So I don't know if it's the best practice, but what we do is that we don't get into the nitty-gritty details of how many hours are you going to be spending on each specific task. We try to make them a little bit more high level and align them to the deliverables, how they're defined in the contract. And then we end up using more of a generic resource, Microsoft project resource. We tend to use more generic resources attached to those tasks. And that's been successful. Maybe it's not the best way to do it, but it's allowed us to manage the projects with some decent degree of control and also not kill our data.
I would echo what Justin said. I would, make sure that you're kind of more milestone focused so that you can keep track of the project, but yet you're not at that nitty-gritty detail of, tracking the vendor hours.
Thanks for your responses. And I think this one's for you. Do you find using Agile in the healthcare setting a challenge when it comes to clinical staff?
I think there's a time and a place for everything. So where we're more successful with using Agile is in our digital transformation areas, and less on, device integration and things like that, or M&As. So I would stick to the more, heavily technology-driven projects rather than, device-driven, if that makes sense.
Thanks, Ange. And Justin, do you also use Planner?
We dabble with it here and there. So you may have seen on when I showed our team site that we had a journey board, and we used Planner to make what we call a journey board. Really, it's a Kanban board, and we've used it. We've used Planner strategically to kind of figure out our work throughput, but Planner gets out of control pretty quick. When you get too much stuff in there, it's kind of hard to follow. So we do use it for some small things, and we have even, you can link from your Microsoft project file to a Planner file. So if that seems to be a comfortable situation for a particular smaller project or a particular team, we've done it, but we don't rely on it, and we don't approach our project saying, yeah, let's do all this stuff in Planner. At the same time, talking about visual task boards, we're going through our software development arm here is going through an agile transformation. So they're doing everything now in Azure DevOps. And one of our next steps is working through, well, how do we use these two tools together? I'm not there yet.
Thanks, Justin. We have another question for you. Could you please expand upon how you were able to share Power BI reports through Teams?
Yeah, so it gets much easier to share them when everybody in your entire organization has a Power BI license, because if they don't, then they can only see the public reports, and we only have one report that's public. So how we've done that is when we set up the Power BI reports, the group that owns that is that team, the group that is associated with that team. So, originally when we implemented our system, it was a completely different group. So what I had to do is when I set up the team site, brand new team site, team IT, PMO project reporting, then I moved all of the reports into that group. So that particular team is, I guess, the administrative owner. And I don't know if I'm saying this right, but this is what I did. So now what I can do, because the permissions are connected between that team and that series of reports, they're all published under that group. When I have a new person who needs access to that, I can go into the team site and I can just add them to that team permission set, and they get access to that Power BI report. So, and of course, that's predicated on the fact that everybody has a real license to Power BI in our organization.
And on top of that, does the Power BI data refresh into Teams each time a data set refreshes?
Yeah, that's a good question too. So we have it set to refresh 6 times a day. A couple reports only go once because they're not as necessary. But in general, I think Power BI lets you, it's either 6 or 8. I think it's 6. But we've got it set up to refresh throughout the day, a couple times at night. So it does not refresh as soon as you save your file. It will refresh based on that schedule that we've set up. And it's probably important to note too, in the system itself, there's the concept of saving your project and there's the concept of publishing your project. So you can go in and dabble and make edits and save it, and those changes are there. And not until you specifically publish the file does it get put out into the data set for collection and publishing into Power BI.
Another one for you, Justin. How much effort and time from the internal IT teams was needed to implement the solution?
Oh boy, another good one. That takes a little bit of thought. So I probably, during the actual implementation, I was probably available about 75% of my time for those 12 weeks. It was pretty dedicated. I would say I had two other people who were at least 50% dedicated for the 12 weeks, and then two others who would participate in our kind of two or three others who would participate in our core workshops. So design, they would sit there all week. UAT, they would help test. Moving forward after implementation, for the first 6 months, I probably still dedicated at least a third to half of my time on getting the system working. It was like Ange said, it's a marathon, not a sprint, and I still dedicate probably at least 4 hours a week just to the system itself and going out there and proselytizing its usage. So, and we have five people from the project office who probably put between 1 and 2 hours a week into it, assisting.
Thanks, Justin. From an anonymous individual, the tools are all great, but there's always the human element and interactions that happen outside of the tool utilization. Could either of you share what best practices are followed, if any, in your experiences outside of the tool?
I guess one thing I will say, the tool gives you the information to have the conversation, right? So the tool is never a replacement for human interaction. It really just gives you the script in order to, have the conversations you need to have, if that makes sense.
I'd agree with that. Yeah, that's very well said. And you still need to, as far as adoption and everything else, outside of just making sure the projects are managed correctly, that still just takes continual conversation and work. Yeah.
Also, Ange, you mentioned a prior PPM tool before you switched over to Microsoft Project. Could you tell us what that tool was again, please?
Am I allowed to tell you that?
Are you? I don't know.
I mean, it was PlanView.
Okay, another question. Are either of you using various tenants to manage different areas of your organizations? And would you recommend this approach, if so?
I'm thinking about that. I don't know if I know the answer. So in the actual project system, we only have one tenant. And we have not looked into we've thought about maybe some larger agencies perhaps may need their own, but I would like to, before going there, I would very much like to try to get them onto our particular implementation, just because I think if we're trying to move towards being a unified state government with unified reporting, I just think it would become more difficult if we had multiple tenants.
We're also in one tenant.
Thanks. And how much organizational maturity is needed to move a tool? How many PMs would be needed for a staff of 100 IT? Could either of you answer that question?
I mean, I think that's a question that has a lot of variables that are kind of unknown to me at the moment. What I can do is give you a ratio of what we're currently seeing, and that is not really PM staff to IT staff, but really project managers and the number of projects they manage. So we're seeing each PM manage, for almost 5 projects per person. And again, we focus on the more complex enterprise projects. I'm not sure if that helped answer anything, but that's kind of the formula we're using right now.
And I'd say we're pretty similar. We're also focused on kind of the major big lifts. And yeah, we probably have a similar workload where maybe you've got 4 or 5, although some projects may be so big that you've got 3 project managers on them. And then when that's the case, we look to supplement our staff with contractors. So we may put a primary PM who's internal and knows all of our processes really well, and then we get 1 or 2, however many we need, contract PMs to assist. But a lot of it depends on the complexity, and that's kind of what we end up focused on, because you could have a $2 million project that's literally super easy to implement compared to a $500,000 one that's got political ramifications and difficult teams to work with, and that one's gonna take all your time. So it's a hard one to answer, I guess. But to give you some historical perspective, I guess we have 15 people in full-time and then 6 contractors, and we're staffing, what is it, like 60 projects right now, but some of those are small. Yeah.
All right, it looks like we've got time for one more question. Regarding dashboards, do your dashboards use only the transactional data from Project Online, the dashboards you produce? In other words, do you store snapshots or store calculated data over time?
So yeah, right now it's all transactional. So what you see is what's live in the system at the moment. We are kind of in internal discussions right now. So I think I mentioned we've got a ServiceNow thing going on, and we've got an Azure DevOps thing going on. We're looking at which data goes where, or which data from what system needs to be presented. And with that, we are looking into building a kind of data warehouse of all that project information from the multiple systems, so we could do some of that historical data too. So in order to get the out of the box, in order to get the historical stuff, we do a lot of we'll either do a screen grab of things, or you could also export the data at regular intervals. So that part is a little bit of a manual process. So you can, in Power BI, you can pop it out into a spreadsheet of data, right? So we could track our history and improvement that way.
All right, I think that's it for questions.